Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the greatest recordings ever. And today I am proud, so very proud, to feature the Wurst, or the Wurst, of P.D.Q. BACH. Without question, one of the greatest recordings ever, particularly in the history of classical music comedy, which, believe you me, is a niche. I mean, a serious niche. The number of classical music comedy people who are really funny, whose work has survived, is rather small. I saw a bunch of them. I mean, when I was a kid, I saw Victor Borge. I saw Danny Kaye, who was fabulously amusing, doing classical music comedy. It was a thing that people could do. You know, Anna Russell, of course, I saw her farewell tour multiple times because she farewelled for quite a while. So I got to see her all over the place. And oh my God, she was hilarious. And, you know, Florence Foster Jenkins, of course, was unintentional comedy. But for most of us growing up in the 60s particularly, and 70s, classical comedy meant P.D.Q. BACH, a.k.a. Professor Peter Schickele from the University of Southern North Dakota at Hoople, or something like that. He was wonderfully witty. Yes, some of his root humor was of the, locker room vulgar sort. He was maybe a little misogynistic by today's standards. And, but today has no standards when it comes to comedy. I mean, comedy is a dead issue, just like criticism is a dead issue. And for the same reason, because it makes people uncomfortable. It makes them laugh. It makes them think. It makes them question, things that they don't want to question. I mean, all of those things, it's just so pathetic. It really is. So it's important that we laugh. It's important that we preserve things that make us laugh. And I'm happy to promote the daylights out of them. And this is a fabulous collection. It really is. Let me tell you what's on here. First, you have the Concerto for Horn and Hard Art. Now, this is going to be something that a lot of people are not going to really understand. Horn and Hard Art was a company that ran automats. And an automat in the day was a place where you would go to get lunch or a meal, dinner, whatever it was. But you would walk into the place and there was a wall of little glass doors, sort of like post office boxes, but transparent. And behind each little glass door was a food item. And you would shove coins into the little slot and you would open it and you would take out your food item and you would sit down and eat. And I used to eat at Horn and Hard Art. I mean, I know where the last one was. It was in the Chrysler Building in New York City on 42nd Street. And my mother, when I was young, my mother would take me out of school, which, being a teacher in the public school system, she sort of understood that there was only a limited amount of anything that you were going to get in that place. And so she took me to New York to see shows, to see museums, to see plays. She would take me out of school. And when we went to New York, and my brother was little too then, we would eat sometimes at Horn and Hard Art, at the world's last automat. They used to be very popular. They really were. So that already dates this, and it's unfortunate, but it does. And, the Concerto for Horn and Hard Art involves using a automat with all the things behind it and using the things behind it as musical instruments, including things like, peanut butter sandwiches and whatnot. There was a visual element to it, but the music itself is hilarious because Schickele was a brilliant composer, a very, very fine composer, actually, and one with an absolutely encyclopedic knowledge of the classical tradition and the ability to manipulate it for amusing purposes. I mean, he wrote some of his own pieces and are hysterical. Eine kleine Nichtmusik, for example, is extremely amusing. And there's something of that in here. His Quodlibet, which contains excerpts from every single piece of classical music you've ever heard in your life, all jammed together in the most amusing way. Luciano Berio did a Quodlibet more or less on Mahler's Second Symphony and his Sinfonia, but it wasn't funny at all. He was taking it totally seriously, whereas Schickele's is hilarious, which is much truer to the concept of what a Quodlibet, that is what pleases you, is what it means in Latin. And so anyway, so there's that. Then we have the cantata. Oh, the cantata with Iphigenia in Brooklyn. It's fabulous cantata because, Iphigenia really got around. She was in Aulus, she was in Taurus, she was everywhere, in all of those Baroque operas and things. So here she is in Brooklyn, and you have a countertenor, bargain countertenor, as they call. Was it Jose Ferrante, I think, or someone like that? And oh my goodness! And also you have double reeds without oboes and bassoons, just the reeds. They sound rather like kazoos. It's marvelous. It's a wonderful Baroque send-up. Then we've got, let's see, New Horizons in Music Appreciation, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, the first movement of which is played and called like a sporting event by two announcers. I can't even begin to get into what they do to this poor piece of music, and you'll hear that. Then the Schlepptet in E-flat major, which is fabulous. It features movements such as the Yehudi Menuetto, and things like that. Then a game show, What's My Melodic Line? The madrigal, My Bonnie Lass She Smelleth, from the Triumphs of Thusnelda. Oh my, yes. My bonnie lass she smelleth, making the flowers jealous. I sang that, actually. Then we've got, let's see, the Unbegun Symphony, which is a work by Schickele, which is one of his assemblages of every popular tune you've ever heard in your life. It's just amazing. His half-act opera, The Stoned Guest, highlights. We only get highlights. And the Fugue in C minor, the Fuga Vulgaris for Calliope four hands, which is quite extraordinary. And last but not least, the oratorio, The Seasonings, which is all about just that. If you've got the money, honey, I've got the time. If you've got the money, honey, I've got the time. Yes, exactly. It's wonderful. It's wonderful and lighthearted and irreverent. And I can keep talking about comedy is like talking about sex. It's just not even worth it most of the time. You just have to do it and get as much pleasure as you can out of it. And this is very, very pleasurable. Delightful stuff, and it deserves to be memorialized in the history of humor, comedy, and classical music. It does. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.